to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torts, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torts and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution.
We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
I remember seeing a kid's science book in a store the other day. It's meant to teach them science, and the title was something catchy like, "How do I fossilize my pet hamster?" So the instruction was, well, take your hamster, take 1 million years, and so on, right? It takes a lot of time. The biblical view is different. The biblical view says that fossils form very quickly. Most of them, not all, but most of them actually trace back to the flood, because to get fossils, as we said, you need to have the dead animal. It needs to be covered quickly by layers of sediment and have access to water, something that's carrying minerals in it. And if you have all those elements, you can get fossils. And they would say that during the time of a worldwide flood, which could be anywhere from 2,500 BC to as far back as 3,346 BC, you had the entire world covered with water. And of course, the land masses and these big storms and displacements would have huge quantities of sediments flowing all around. The animals die, they get covered quickly, and quickly turn into fossils. It doesn't take millions of years. And at this point, people will poo-poo them because they'll say, oh, of course it takes millions of years. And then the question is, well, how do you know? I mean, did you ever bury bones and leave them for 1 million years and come back to look at them? Well, no, of course not. The reality is, you can, and we have done this in the lab, you can fossilize chicken bones, for example, in 5 to 10 years. It doesn't take millions of years. There's actually some fun examples of rapidly forming fossils. In New Zealand, there's a volcano, Mount Tarawera, that erupted in the year 1886. And stuff oozed out, volcanic ash. It covered some people's encampments. And they dug it up 60 years later. 60 years later, you know what they found there? They found a fully mineralized bowler hat turned to rock, fossilized. Found petrified or fossilized ham, fossilized bag of flour. And these things fossilized within 60 years. So when we look at the official version, it actually doesn't make sense. Okay? Because if an animal dies and it's sitting there on the sea bottom or on the ground, it doesn't stay there for millions of years to get fossilized. Scavengers eat it, bacterial breakdown. Even the skeleton won't stay together. It's pulled apart by the various scavengers. Some of whom will actually break the bones to get to the marrow on the inside. So that model doesn't even seem to make sense, whereas the flood model works perfectly. It has all of the ingredients, all of the elements you need to form fossils. They're all right there. Now, this is the first issue. It doesn't take millions of years to make fossils. But to go on the offense, the problem we have with fossils is they don't show what the theory of evolution requires. What should we see in the fossil record if evolution happened? Well, Charles Darwin himself in his own book, The Origin of Species, chapter 14, tells us what sort of fossils are needed to support the theory of evolution. He says this is what we should find: an infinitude of connecting links between the living and extinct inhabitants of the world, and at each successive period between the extinct and still older species. This would afford plain evidence of the gradation and mutation of the forms of life. What does he mean by that? Well, imagine you have a reptile, snake, and we're told that these reptiles have, through millions of years, evolved into birds. Let's take just one feature, the skin covering. The snake has scales, and the scales are essentially they're folds in the skin. The bird is covered with feathers, and the feathers are very carefully structured item that actually sits inside pores in the skin. It's actually not part of the skin like scales are. And it has these very tiny hair-like structures come out of the side, which if you look at very closely, it's a very detailed, carefully designed connection of hooks and barbs along a central shaft and barbules. And the point of it is to make it aerodynamic. So you flap it, you get the maximum lift. Now, if snakes evolved into birds, or say lizards evolved into birds, you would have had to go from a skin covering of scales to a skin covering of feathers. Now, this couldn't happen in one step. There's so many differences. So what you should find in the fossil record, if this is true, is these connecting links Darwin spoke about. You would have to have lizards or snakes that have scales on as their skin covering. And then somewhere along the line, you're going to have some kind of animal that has a skin covering, has a fold in the skin, but somehow has, some kind of hook or barbule, something that's 99% scale, but not quite a scale. There's a little difference that makes it 1% feather. And as you go forward, you'd have to have animals that have skin coverings that are like 98% scale, 2% feather, and keep going until you get up to like 75% scale, 25% feather. We get 50% scale, 50% feather, and then upwards until 25% scale, 75% feather, and so on until it's feathers. So this is what a genuine connecting link, or what we call intermediate form, is. It's an animal that has some kind of structures, organs, organ systems that are midway between two finished versions. That's what we need. Something like an animal, as I say, with skin covering that's 50% scale, 50% feather. They try to point to supposed feathered dinosaurs and they say these are intermediates, but they're really not, because if these dinosaurs had feathers, they're fully formed, fully functional feathers. Where is the intermediate form? Mm-hmm. Where's the dinosaur that has skin covering that's 50% scale, 50% feather? I don't mean half of it is covered with scales and half covered with feathers. I mean every piece of the skin covering has to itself be structurally 50% scale, 50% feather.
Right.
Those would be genuine intermediate form. And there is not one of those. Not one anywhere have we found.
And also those scale feathers would also have to give some kind of advantage for the animal in order for it to be passed down, if this was really the case.
Exactly. Yeah. To maintain this in the population, it would have to give a benefit to survival, the so-called survival of the fittest. But if you think about it, you have lizards, their legs are fully functional. They're great for scampering around here and there. Birds have wings, and they're great for flying. What happens when you have a structure that's like 50% leg and 50% wing? Well, you can't fly with it yet. Yeah. You're not going to be able to run nearly as well with something that's like your legs are halfway wings. What's going to happen? Well, the predators will eat you. You're not going to pass on those mutations anymore.
Right, yeah.
Right? What they do is they point to animals that have features of more than one thing. And we'll look at some of these later. But just for now, I can tell you, these are not intermediate forms. A genuine intermediate form has structures, organs, organ systems that are partway between finished, fully functional forms. If the parts are all fully functional, it's not an intermediate form. And you will see when they give you examples, they will always be these kinds that have fully finished, fully functional forms, and they will tell you these are intermediates, and they really aren't. Take, for example, your duck-billed platypus. Very weird kind of animal, which maybe God created just for this purpose. Because you look at the duck-billed platypus, its bill looks like the bill of a duck, hence duck-billed platypus. But the tail is like the tail of a beaver. Its feet are like the feet of an otter. The fur is most similar to bear's fur. It has a poison gland, and it's oviparous. That means it lays eggs. So it's very, very different from any other kind of animal. But nobody suggests that the duck-billed platypus is an intermediate between duck and bear, or between duck and beaver. Has all these weird features, but all of them are fully functional, fully finished, fully there. So this is the thing, we do not have, and we have not found transitional forms. Okay? If You go back down into the Earth's crust, you go to the oldest level, supposed oldest levels of the Earth's crust, you find nothing until you get to the level called the Cambrian level of rock, and you get what's called the Cambrian explosion. And suddenly in the Cambrian level, you have billions of fossils there, and they're all of highly complex forms of life that don't have any ancestors anywhere in the fossil record. So supposedly, going from a single cell to these animals would have taken billions of years, and yet we've got nothing. How come no fossils of intermediate forms have remained? Now, it should be noted that Darwin did say this is the biggest of the objections that could be raised against his theory. But he said, I think the answer is in the paucity of the fossil record. We just haven't found a lot yet. And he said, just, give us time. We'll find them. Okay? We will find them as we dig up more fossils. Well, perhaps he could have gotten away with that in 1859. But we've now gone more than 160 years then. We have found, literally, billions of fossils. Billions of them, and we have not found one genuine intermediate form. Not one. And now statistically, you should have more intermediate forms than you have final forms, and we've not found one. Okay? That's a problem. It supposedly took 100 million years for a fish to evolve from an invertebrate, and there must have been hundreds of thousands of intermediate forms between an invertebrate and a fish, and yet we have not one transitional form, not one of these intermediates. Supposedly 50 million years for this fish then to evolve into an amphibian, but again, not one genuine transitional form. Not one single fossil that has something that's part fin, part feet. Nothing. And that's true between every major plant and animal kind. They just appear in the fossil record, and they're in the fossil record. They may disappear. If they've gone extinct, they may still be there, but no intermediate forms.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com.